Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Caitlin McKegg. I am a real estate broker here in Phoenix, Arizona. Today, I'm talking about who is buying homes right now. And we've had some pretty big changes between who we've been seeing purchase homes in the last 2 years, really compared to who's purchasing homes now. And so I'm going to go through that information, some of the numbers. I don't have a whole lot of charts and graphs to share today, just some visuals on the screen of the numbers. So hopefully that helps. Of course, all of this information is provided by the Cromford Report, which I'm a subscriber to, and they look through all of the MLS information to help us understand what's going on. So thank you for being here. Hit the subscribe button. Come follow me on Instagram at Your Phoenix Real Estate Agent to see more of my life in real estate and outside of real estate. And let's just get into the data. So like I said, we've had some changes. We've started to see a big change in terms of investment purchases. And so our investment purchases in the Phoenix area have fallen from 20% purchases for investment to 18% of purchases are for investment. And this is really looking at the third quarter of this year as compared to the second quarter and first quarter of this year. So earlier in the year, of course, our market was much crazier. We had a much higher investor concentration, lots of cash buyers, and this is reflective of that. So it's a fall of almost 14% in terms of the purchases for an investment property and that intention versus what we were seeing previously. So that's interesting. Investors have pretty much pulled out of the market or really made it a big decrease in their purchases. Now, second home purchases is another thing we've seen decline. It fell from 11% of purchases being a second home to 7.7% of purchases being for a second home. And this is a change of 30%. So we've seen a pretty big drop off in purchases for the investment or the second home reason. Again, it's not a necessary purchase. And so as the market has shifted, things are a little bit more uncertain. People are not as willing to buy a second home just for the convenience or the luxury of it. They're going to be a little bit more conservative with their choices, not to mention interest rates. If you're planning to finance a second home, that's not a very pretty payment right now. The other thing, of course, we got to talk about iBuyers. So our iBuyers purchases, of course, has fallen. That has been a decline of 33% overall. They used to be 5.7% of purchases, and now they're only about 3.8% of purchases being an iBuyer. And when I talk about iBuyers, I'm mentioning Opendoor and OfferPad. Those are two of the main players here in Phoenix. And if you've ever reached out to try to get an offer from them for your house, you may have noticed in the past, they were given some real good offers. And now they're given some real bad offers. So they're only buying homes if they're getting it for the deal that works for them, because they're having a tough time selling these off. And I'm actually going to talk more about that. I have some numbers about iBuyers that I want to share as well, because that's pretty interesting information. Now let's talk about primary purchases. So people buying to occupy as their primary home. We actually saw this number grow. So all these other categories declined, primary purchases grew. Makes perfect sense, right? All these secondary type of purchases like investments and second homes are not as necessary, but people still need to buy for the purpose of occupying long term. So primary residence purchases grew from 62% of purchases to 70% of purchases, which is an increase of about 13% overall. So we're seeing a lot more purchases be for that primary reason. Makes perfect sense. And the good news about this is actually a really healthy thing to see. You don't want to see a market full of investment homes. And that's a big part of what happened in 2008 as well. And so getting really high with these cash investor purchases where no one's occupying these homes can be a little bit scary. And so now that we see primary residence being on the top of the list of why people are purchasing, That's a good sign of a healthy market. It also indicates that this correction is taking place. We're making that shift back to a little bit more of a normal market. Now, speaking of primary residences, this is another stat that I thought was interesting. More homes are purchased as primary residences in Pinal County, 73%, than Maricopa County, which is 69%. So Pinal County is really where we start to see like Santan Valley start, some of Queen Creek, Coolidge, that area. So all of that makes sense. It's also much more affordable in those areas than it is in some other cities within Metro Phoenix. So purchases for a primary reason makes sense to be there versus, investors, that kind of thing. So let's talk about these iBuyers. And I am going to share with you this chart here. This is only showing the Opendoor listing counts. And if you've watched any of my videos in the past, I've talked a little bit about the iBuyers and where we stand with all of that. Let me get this to be just a tad bigger for you if I can. Okay, so here are their active listing counts. And I know I'm kind of in the way, so I'm going to move myself down for a sec. You can see this is where they were at back in 2020. Things have totally changed since then, and now we're kind of lopsided. So the orange is under contract, the blue is active. So you can see Opendoor specifically has a lot more active homes for sale, sitting at 1432 as compared to the number that they have actually under contract at 281. And this is not a good place to be because they're holding all of these homes in cash. But what I find to be so interesting is that I've worked with them quite a bit, and I've had buyers wanting to make offers on their properties that are, of course, lower than what they're listed at. And Opendoor is not too willing to negotiate. They certainly have a number that they're trying to hit, and I understand that. But more than once, I've been told by Opendoor that they are not going to counter the offer because we're too far apart, and to come back if my client decides to come up in their price. So they're really firm on their numbers, even though they have this surplus of listings. And I just wonder how long that will work out for them. So let's talk about iBuyers as a whole. iBuyer sales in October were down 40% compared to September. So that's just a month difference between September and October. And the number of sales and transactions they were able to do was down 40%. Now, keep in mind, on Monday, I talked about how sales in general were down, I think 48%. So they're just part of that. But it is, a pretty big difference from month to month to have your sales down that low. OfferPad actually had an increase in their sales. They had 28 sales in September. And then in October, they had 55. So they've been moving properties a little bit better than Opendoor. And then Opendoor actually had a decrease, a pretty big decrease from 431 sales in September to 221 sales in October. So the funny thing about this that the Cromford report was mentioning is that this decrease in Opendoor's sales actually helped our dollar per square foot on average overall because Opendoor's stats weren't mixed in there, and they've been selling for some pretty low, like under market prices. So, which again is interesting because they don't negotiate, but I think eventually they get knocked down maybe on their concessions through the inspection period and that kind of thing. So, yeah, having fewer homes by Opendoor in the mix has made our dollar per square foot a little bit better in the Phoenix area. And then just looking at their active listings, they had a peak of 1,800 active listings back in August. That was up here. So they've certainly offloaded a good amount, but the Cromford report is saying that more than likely they'd probably be more comfortable around a listing count of 400. And they are currently at 1432. So it'll be interesting to see how this works for OfferPad and Open Door. Open Door really being the one that has taken on more of the risk. They were also more aggressive when the market was hot. So uh, it'll be interesting to see how they offload these homes if they do start slashing prices, and also how that affects the overall market, because when they own a pretty large market share of what we have out there, the things that they're doing with their prices are going to affect the market overall. That's going to fall into our numbers. So that is who is buying homes right now. That's a little bit about iBuyers and what's going on in our market. I think it'll be interesting to watch and see how this plays into things. It will also be interesting to see how our intended use continues throughout the rest of this year and into next year, if we do start to see more investment purchases come back or not. But if you have any questions about Phoenix real estate, you can reach out to me anytime. I have all my info in the description below, and as well as a link to set up a time to chat, and some links for a free home valuation and some other stuff down there. So check it out. Thank you for joining me this week. I'll be back on Monday with a Monday market update. I'm Caitlin McCagg with the Desert Dreamers team.